Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets move the losing streak needle to 6, and in the process, remind us that they can still give you some fun games for a Thursday night. We dive into it all coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marmick. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And Doug, tongue-tied at the top, but we're going to talk about the Warriors game, Fan Take Friday, some things coming in, of course, across all the social media platforms. In the end, though, 6-game losing streak. The Nets now can't stop losing in spite of having recent winning success.
0-6 since we started rooting for the wins.
Woo,
and again, it's again, you have to believe it. For it to count, you have to believe it. And I'll say this, the Nets, well, I don't actually know the exact number, but the Nets were outscored by 23 from the time that I tweeted, Nets are pantsing the Warriors right now. I tweeted that when they were up 20, when they were like 25-5 in the first quarter, all downhill from there. But this, I will say, we're joking around a lot about this. This was a really exciting game. This is one of those games where you get the Nets out way early. You get an absolute, it's not iconic because the Nets stink, but like an awesome Steph game with like some truly ridiculous. You get the night Steph with a minute to go. And the Nets almost come back and win. Well, they didn't really almost come back and win, but they stage a furious final minute comeback. And so, like, from a basketball perspective, this is kind of like everything you want in a game. And in a different season, maybe it's heartbreaking that the Nets lose. In this season, it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe we just got everything from that one. It was that kind of game.
Because, and you mentioned there, because like it was established, or at least down the stretch there, the Nets are making some shots. They're doing some things. But it's funny. It really is. It's almost comical because at the end, you're like, hey, this is wow, what a fun game. At no point down the stretch do you go, watch out, Golden State. Brooklyn's about to close the door here and retake the lead in the final seconds. No, but the fact that you're able to stay with a team like this, and then you even mentioned you should be able to probably in games like these, just watch Steph Curry and be like, that's amazing. And I actually just saw this clip the other day, someone asking him, not to totally derail the podcast here, asking him about, do you think about your legacy and maybe when you'll finally stop playing? I think everyone forgets that Steph Curry's old. Like, he is among the old players in the league, but he has such he has a young face and he plays with kind of like that kid energy in a lot of ways. And he's a smaller player. So I think people are always going to associate smaller players in the league as somehow being more youthful and more energetic and could play forever. These games are pretty special to watch. And I know that Nets fans don't care about that when we think about the tank and the season and the draft picks, but that is cool. It is cool as a 40-point second quarter from the Golden State Warriors after you have the Nets hold them, however you want to frame it, to 15 points in the first. So it was a really fun game. And again, Doug and I desperately wanted them to win this game. Going to keep on rooting for those wins all down the stretch of this season.
Yeah, so like if you take this game in stages, right? Like the Nets jump out to a very early lead. It was very chippy to the point where I actually thought there was a chance there might be like a fight, right? Like Zaire Williams and GB3, Gary Payton, or GB2, which I can't remember which number it is. One of the GPs. GB2. They get into a little bit of a scrap early on. The game was really, really chippy. And I was like, maybe if the Nets were better, I think there'd be a fight. It's just one of those things.
It mattered for the Nets in a different way, right? Just beyond like wanting to play hard. If there was like real wins and losses and success for the season on the line, probably a fight.
Like if the Warriors saw them as a real threat, I think we would be there. But then you're like, we can't really fight this team. We're headed to the playoffs. This team, I don't think that's going to be a good idea. But there did have this like chippy element to it. There were a lot of Warriors fans in Barclays. I mean, this was not totally a home game. A lot of Warriors fans sitting courtside, big cheers when Steph. I sometimes think about Steph as being one of those guys that can convert fans too, where even if you're a Nets fan at this game and you're watching the second quarter unfold, and then you're watching even the shot that he hit right before half, which is like this like quintessential two guys in his face. It's unclear how Steph even got the shot off at his size. Yeah. And it just goes in. Like he was like kind of the stuff he was pulling at the Olympics, and really the stuff he's pulled for his whole career. So you have all this stuff. And then like late game, not to go back to it, but like they are down 10 with a minute to go. And
Yeah.
they cut it to 2. They cut it to 2, but then Steph goes and or they cut it to 3, and then Steph goes and hits a couple free throws, and that's kind of it. But like it just had these pieces that you kind of like want in a game. And I think, to go back to Steph for 1 second, like you said, you are right. He is old, 36 years old, which you just do forget. Like you kind of just forget about him, like being in that age range.
Yeah.
But he is one of those guys too, where it is like sort of appointment television. It's impossible to kind of like not root for him, right? On some level, like he's kind of like the person everyone wants to be, just like diminutive, has stuck around the league for a long time. Even back to like the Davidson days. I don't know, not to go retrospective on his whole career, but these are the kind of games that you watch and you're like, okay, well, this is how it can be fun. Like these are versions of basketball that can be a lot of fun. The wins and losses, like, is it really going to matter in the end? I mean, probably not. Would it have been a cool thing for the Nets to pull this out? Probably. There would have been a certain fit. Not us. Not us.
Not us.
Not us. I have to say this. A certain element of the fan base that would have been annoyed and probably was annoyed early on. But it's like, it's just a hard way to root for the games like that. You just got to like root for like really cool basketball. And I think on a Thursday night in Barclays in a season that's been mostly down, even if there's been a couple of little things, like this was like a fun evening of basketball, especially when the Warriors take a look and like, hold on a second. We're down. We can't.
35-15 after one against the Brooklyn Nets.
35-15.
Hold on.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like we can't allow this to happen. And like, that's something that's among the games that I'm going long here, but like among the games we've tuned into this season, I thought this was like one of the more entertaining ones, if not like one of the most entertaining ones of the whole year.
Yeah, and you know what? Listen, guess what? The Brooklyn Nets also, maybe like we always say time and again, watch out. They'll sneak up on you. They're still doing that. They're still sneaking up on teams. They had a 35-15 lead against the Golden State Warriors, and it doesn't matter which way you slice it. That has to do with the fact that they're the Brooklyn Nets, and the record is the record, and the perception is the perception, and the team is the team. So you're always going to kind of catch these moments where you have to cover a 20-point gap over a 3-quarter span. The Warriors do that. 121-119 is the final here. But coming up, it is Fan Take Friday. I have a follow-up question about the vibes watching games like these, and also some feedback when it comes to whether or not the tank is ruining the NBA. We'll do that here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Basketball season heating up. No better way to get into the action with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. All you're doing on Prize Picks is you're going more or less on at least 2 player projections for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. I like to hear that number. Easy to use, available in over 30 states. Lets you mix and match projections for cross different sports. Maybe you want to go, more on Steph Curry, hit on the number of points. You want to go less on a couple of these Nets guys. That'd be fair for you to do. I think on a night-to-night basis on Prize Picks makes it easy with the stats too. It's just points, rebounds, blocks, assists, steals, all the stuff you love. You can combine a baseball season right around the corner as well. When you win, your money hits your account in as little as 15 minutes. No waiting around every Tuesday. Prize Picks discounts, select players, projections up to 25%, even more value to your lineup. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On NBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, it's a Fan Take Friday, so to speak, but obviously a game on Thursday night against the Warriors, so we want to touch on that a little bit as well. Do want to get into some fans that were talking about the tank and how it relates to the NBA and what's gone on over these last handful of seasons, especially with certain teams that seem to live near the bottom. But the one other thing that John, I will just say, because I want to, Cam Thomas now getting multiple games back under his belt, 27 minutes in this one. They spread out a lot of the minutes into the bench here. Like you have 2 guys in Zaire and in Tyrese Martin who play in the 20s, but 17 and 18 minutes for Watford. Wilson, Day'Ron Sharpe gets back in the mix. And again, does not seem to be able to play good basketball since he had that career game. Pretty much ever since he had the breakout and suggested that maybe he's deserving of a bigger role, he has gone right back into his tortoiseshell and become just kind of a guy that comes off the bench for a handful of minutes. But the thing that jumped out real quick from a Warrior standpoint, and I know there's free throws late, 19 points combined between Jimmy Butler and Curry at the free throw line. 10-10 for Jimmy, 9-9 for Curry. And it's one of those things that when you're 1 stars, they're going to get more, they're going to get calls. Deservingly, they're going to get calls. But also, when you have players that can do that and can draw the contacts and get the fouls and get to the line, it does change the complexion of any game. Like the idea of, well, how do you get back into it? How do you erase a lead? How do you maintain a lead? Well, guess what? If we're going into the paint and we're attacking at the basket and we're that high level of a skill set, yeah, we're probably going to end up the line a lot. Like, it's 20 points. That was the deficit from the first quarter, erased by what are considered to be, for the better shooters in the league, free points at the free throw line, let alone keeping guys in foul trouble, let alone extending the game when you need to for certain stretches, all those kind of things, which I just think jumps out when you look over at Brooklyn and you see 6 trips to the line for Thomas, 6 for Cam Johnson, and 6 for Wilson actually off the bench. And that was the tail of theirs going to the free throw line.
Yeah, the Nets struggled with like defensively after that first initial stretch. Like, they really had a trouble containing Steph. They were trying to bring 2 to the ball. It's really, really hard to do with him because they're just gonna he does this all game long. Is that you bring 2 to the ball, then he gets out of it, and then he just instantly resets. Like, there was an old clip of Steph, which I was really stuck with. I mean, I don't know how old it was. I saw it recently and I thought it was old. It was like him teaching basketball to a bunch of kids. And he was saying about how one of the worst things you can do is like pass the ball to someone and then kind of like retreat back and like ask for it back. Right. Like, so if I'm probably gonna do a bad job of like picturing this, but like, it's like what a lot of players use as a reset. They pass it out and then they just get further away from the basket to get further away from the defender and then ask for it back so they can cook. And he's like, that's the worst thing you could ever do. And ever since I saw that, it's so obvious, but ever since I saw that, I've always thought about him and then watching other players do it or not do it also. It's like, because if you watch him, it's like 2 to the ball, gets out of it to like even like a non-shooter, and then he's just gone. Like, and he's somewhere else.
Right.
Like, and he's either slipping past someone, like they're running like off ball screens to him, like, because Draymond really understands this really well. Anyway, it's like once that starts happening, it just totally discombobulates you on a defensive end, and it's really hard. Like, it's just really hard to stick with guys like this over the course of a game. The Nets tried to, double him. They've had Zaire Williams on him at times, like. And then, they have a backcourt that's like not exactly the strongest defensively. Although I do want to bring up something about Cam's game here. But overall, once they start rolling downhill with that stuff and they're getting the hit aheads and they're kind of dialing it on defense, you could see it kind of coming, right? And so, and then when you get discombobulated, that's when like the fouls come. So so yeah, I took a long and winding road to your free throw thing, but like, and then you're like all of a sudden there like 19 trips to the line. And so I don't know. It's like I think it's fun to watch, but you could see the Nets like defensively struggling to just contain after a while. And Jimmy adds another level to this where it's like a different thing than like Clay, but you just have to you have to watch him getting back cut to the basket. You have to watch him getting into the lane. Like, they do some short roll stuff and everyone's kind of passing out of it. So overall, yeah, the Nets just really couldn't. Once it started rolling downhill, it was just like kind of impossible for them to like keep it in the court, I think. And it showed.
And it's one of those things where we talked about so much about the high pressure that the Nets will bring and, taking guys full court and all that stuff. And it's great. But as they start to break that, as Steph Curry starts to break through double teams, and then to your point about motion offense, relocating to a new space, it means that 2 defenders are now no longer marking anybody, at least for a moment, right?
Well, can I say one more thing? That's how they lost the game. They were already going to lose, but in the final, with a minute left, they were inbounding under the basket. This exact thing happened. They were inbounding under the basket. Steph kind of like passes it to Draymond. Draymond comes up to above the break, and for some reason, Claxton and I think it was Zaire double him and lose Steph, and Steph's the inbounder, and he just relocates to the corner and drains that like the night. I call it the night, like it's when he puts his hands up, hits that 3, and that's kind of the backbreaker. And that's juice stage of Freer's comeback after that. But really, that was like, hey, we're up 10 with a minute left. Like, it's kind of over. But it was this exact thing. He passes the ball in, and then he instantly relocates. And if you make a mistake, like they bring 2 to the Draymond 2 to Draymond above the 3-point line. Like, why would you do that? But regardless, Curry this nails a 3. So anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but it was exemplified in this final thing.
And it's funny too, because actually something that comes up when you bring up doubling Draymond as a ball handler, like that, then because it comes back to me, something that I think we've praised about Jordi Fernandez and about this team, right? The intensity they bring on defense. Okay, we're gonna blitz the ball handler, double team him, but because certain things get ingrained into you, you instinctually go, as you mentioned, Claxton, if the thing is Zaire, you go to double team, and then like you probably both have to look down and go, shoot, it's Draymond, right? Like, because conceptually you're executing the game plan, but the reality being we've probably put in a little bit too much energy into stopping, quote unquote, Draymond Green from taking a shot from the outside, and then and it only gets drilled home when you see Steph Curry knock it down, and he's like, "Oh, hey guys, I was over here having a good time." Like, losing Steph Curry on the court is easy to have happen to you, but also the most frustrating thing in the world when you see him taking some open looks. That being the case, the other thing you mentioned there, Cam Thomas, we can touch on him. In terms of what you saw from his game, 27 minutes. What's the big jump out here? Nicholas Claxton had 10 assists. I'm looking at the box score to read. Cam Thomas is 7, and that popped off to me. But 8 of 18, 2 of 6 from deep, gets to the line 6 times, knocks down 5. It's always been an efficient free throw shooter, but the 7 assists. So the other thing that we can talk about is, one, when we say that we want genuinely the Brooklyn Nets to win every game, they're going to continue to lose. That's the policy here. The other thing we do is tell you that Jordi Fernandez really drilled home a point, and there is as murky a future for Cam Thomas as ever. Ever since then, 6 assists, 7 assists, showing multifacets to his game. So maybe we're doing the right thing on a couple of levels here, Doug.
Oh yeah, well that's exactly. Actually, let's hit a quick break here because I have this.
You want to hit a quick one? You want to do a quick one? We'll do a quick one. You know what? We're going to do a quick one here, and then we're going to come back. No, Doug. We're going to do a quick one here, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to get Doug's thoughts on Cam Thomas and where he stands right now. We'll do that all coming up here in just one moment.
All right, first, we're going to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Game tips off, NBA action just getting started. No better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the games, even if you missed the opening tip. Want to go to that fourth quarter comeback, stay in the action, and looking for a bigger payout. You combine those into a same-game parlay. This is the exact live in-game stuff that you want to do. Nets up huge early, late-stage comeback. We're talking about having fun during the game. This is how you keep yourself in the game here over on FanDuel with the live betting. You can, pick if you think someone's going to stage a late stage rally. I'm stumbling now. I'm so excited about what's happening on FanDuel. You can never miss your chance. App's super easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly right now. New FanDuel customers get $150. Now I'm going to make myself feel better. $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, so to tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, talk about the 121-119 loss to the Golden State Warriors, and then also talking about real quick, after a little quick one there, Cam Thomas, we mentioned there, gives you 23 points over 27 minutes. The last 2 games have been good for him in terms of all around and trying to maybe, as we said, take advantage of the stretch down here for the season and showcasing, expanding, right? Convincing everybody, maybe himself, maybe the coaching staff, maybe the fan base, certain segment of them, that he is a guy that can evolve his game going forward for this team.
I mean, he's got 6 assists and 7 assists in the last 2 games in somewhat limited minutes, 27 and 26 minutes. If you push that out to like 34, 35 minutes, 8.5 assists a game, buddy. 8.5 assists a game over the last 2. You know what we say about small sample sizes? We use them to predict the future. That's what we do. We take the small
only
sample
way to
size.
Live, by the way. It's the only way to live.
If you listen to this podcast, you know that we take the smallest sample size available that proves that thing about the thing we want. Small sample size is about the thing we don't want. Forget it. That's a small sample size, useless and irrelevant. Small sample sizes around things we like. That is exactly where you start putting your money down, my friends. And if you're looking at, if you think about his minutes getting expanded, and I say that number like 8.5. Now, do I think it's going to stick? Probably not. Frankly, I just don't even think the Nets offense is good enough to sustain like an 8.5 assist guy from Cam Thomas. So whatever. But in terms of the things that like we thought maybe Jordi Fernandez was kind of saying, and if he was going to be able to hear it, and if we were going to see an actual push, this has been it for sure. Like, he is deferring in places where I think he would have put up tough shots before. He had a couple, like he had one in the corner where it was like sort of getting late in the shot clock. And I think in the past that would have been a grenade. And I think no one would have blamed him either. Like, because, right, it's like, how many other guys can actually score in this team? Right. And he passed to D'Lo, and D'Lo hit a little mid-range jumper because he was wide open. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, this is not something that we've really seen for him. Now, could it be because there aren't often other players on the team that he trusts to actually make the shot? I think that's a reasonable case. If you're Cam Thomas and you're looking around and you're like, well, it's going to be me fading away in the corner, or it's going to be, almost anybody else on the team for another shot in the mid-range.
I choose me.
I think most Nets fans would choose that too. I think that's reasonable. I think a lot of these guys just can't hit a shot. But maybe it's that D'Lo has developed a little more trust just from being able to hit buckets kind of stuff, or he just got the memo or whatever. Like, I'm not really sure what it is, but there have been for sure times over the last 2 games where Cam has passed out of situations where I believe he would have shot in the past. I'm also, and I think you are too, hyper focused on it because we did a whole podcast about it, and we're hyper focused on this. Like, oh, is he passing? Because we thought we're reading the subtext and we thought Jordy Fernandez was saying that or whatever. So I don't know if it's like me just kind of, having my eyes believe it. But if you look at the stats, like I said, 13 assists over the last 2 games, like that's not nothing. And it could have even been more the game before. I don't think this game has many opportunities, but like it could have been 9 assists the game before. And so,
Yep.
I don't know. It's super encouraging. And what do you think? Do you think it sticks? I know I've joked about the sample size thing.
No. I mean, there's 20 games left in the season, right? So if you tell me right now he's averaging over the last 2 games 6.5 assists, and by the way, and we said this before, any fan would. If you look at the roster, you could say any player on there that has a stat that is teammate dependent or overall talent dependent for the guys around them, it's going to suffer, right? It's always going to be a little bit harder on this roster because they don't have a well-constructed or deep team or a high-level talent team. But if over the last 20 games, if we look back at the end of 20 games, and we're talking about him averaging over 5 assists a game, like I won't put 6 or 7, but like if he's averaging over 5 a game, that was, by the way, the goal coming into the season, then that's more than enough of a sample size to say, okay, that means that this aspect of his game is repeatable, and you can think about it in the shape of, what if we add better talent to this roster, right? What if there are more shooters around him on this team? Because that easily, and I'm sure we've talked about this before, but the easiest thing for fans to point to and for us to point to would be, as you mentioned, he's in the corner. The shot clock's winding down. Okay, name the roster. Okay, Cam Johnson can hit shots. We all know that. But he's not a space creator for himself. He's not necessarily going to be able to create on ball. So who are the guys that you're going to be able to kick to? And even if Cam Thomas is willing to, that at a high level, Zaire Williams, 3-point shooting hasn't come around this year. We all hoped for it. It didn't go down. So that means that if Cam Thomas looks to him 4 times in a game on an open 3, chances are he only gets credited with 1 assist out of 4 opportunities, because that's probably closer to the ratio that Zaire is going to hit, or anyone else on this roster too, right? So yeah, if you tell me it's 5 to 6 assists average per game over the last 20, then I think we go into this offseason with a clearer sense of what he can be relative to a new core, a more talented core, and how you think about building a backcourt with him, as opposed to maybe thinking about him as, yes, electric shooter, electric scorer, but you're going to need something different alongside of him for him to be successful, rather than him maybe being the engine of success for players.
Yeah, and we're pretty confident no matter where the Nets land in the draft, like they're not going to be drafting for need. They're just going to be drafting best player available, right? Like I think that, I mean, God, I hope. Like, I don't know. I'm just assuming that, but
they're going to kind of go niche. I think they go niche this year. I think they really drill down.
It will be funny. It will be funny when they re-sign Day'Ron, and then they draft the center because that's the best guy available, and now it's 3 centers. Like that will be then you'll know you'll know for sure they were drafting on talent, but it'll also be
4 centers in the first round. Huh. Well, I would have said best player available. You can't knock the concept.
That's where they were on our board. That's where they were on our board. Like we just said, we're sticking to the board, and that's where they were. So I think we know that the Nets, or we believe the Nets, are not going to be drafting for need. But you have to. So you wouldn't want to think that like there's anyone going to come in and like steal minutes or from somebody. But I do think that like one thing you have to consider with that is if you're drafting certain guys and you want them to be able to develop, you have to have players in the team that are going to be floor raisers. So D'Lo's already suggested that he wants to come back. I think we see him as a floor raiser for other guys on the court. I think that's true, right? So this was Schroeder early in the season, like having a point guard who just like understands the basics of like pick and roll and stuff like that is good. It helps. It helps development. Like I know people always want like these guys to get benched, but it's like, I don't know at what cost. Like at some point, like it helps the other guys get better when someone actually has a clue about how to run, again, the very basics of like
difference between being the Jazz or being these other teams and tanking and everything else. Like you have these guys on the court so that Cam Thomas can have a 6 and a 7 assist game because there's better value in having experienced players on the floor with him as well, right?
Exactly. Like running your centers through 1-5 pick and roll, like getting these other guys in like 1-4 stuff where they have just like pop shooters out. Like that stuff matters. And I know no one wants to see it because everyone wants them to lose every game. And not us, but other
us,
people,
not us.
But like,
You keep
I don't
that,
know.
right?
When you bring in 4 young draft picks, 4 first-round draft picks next year, and then like we joked about before, like then and roll the balls out, it's going to be a mess, and no one gets better from stuff like that. Like Jalen Green really started improving when they got Ime in there and Fred VanVleet and Şengün, who could help run like high offense and stuff like that. And now it like starts to like look not like just your local pickup game. And
Yeah.
I don't know, that stuff does matter at some point. And so overall, if you think Cam Thomas is going to be the kind of guy that can get other players involved and punish you, that if you overcommit to him or something like that, I don't know, that's just good for, it's just good for everyone. I'm really rooting for this. This is the number one thing that we're focused. You might be too. Focused on over the last stretch of this season is like this part of his game, like 6-7 assists a game. I think they snap call the contract like in the offseason. Maybe I'm overstating.
No, I 100%, because it's the only player on this roster right now that you can look at and say, oh yeah, he can, like, we know he can be a star. We know he can be an elite offensive player. And that means we know that he can be a part of a new core, even as you dump in so many new draft picks. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Who stays, who goes, who bench, start, cut, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And we'll reset our Fan Take Friday because we missed that a little bit here. But get us out the door as the Nets will have over the weekend both the Hornets and the Lakers. And by the way, the Raptors play tonight, Friday night. And if they were to win, then the Brooklyn Nets would be in a virtual tie for the 5th overall draft.
All right, let's go for a 2-0 weekend. That's what we're looking for, right? 2-0 over the weekend.
2-0.
Get this thing back on. Get this thing back on track.
Come on, guys.
Stabilize. NBA is about winning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I do. Remind me next week that I want to go through how I think the lottery should be determined. I have a new way, but I'll save that.
Oh, we should, because I blew explaining my concept last time we discussed it. I figured it all out. I just didn't bring it back to the table for the people. So yes, let's do.
Mine's not that serious, but okay. We'll save your serious one and my unserious one about the way it should be dissected. In the meantime, make sure, look, we missed Fan Take Friday, but that's okay. You're going to get into maybe possibly Fan Take some other day next week by leaving a comment over on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe first, then go to a bunch of other accounts that you have over on YouTube, friends, family, subscribe from those as well.
Yep.
Then leave a comment over on YouTube. That's the number one way to help the show.
Who is Danny McDonough? And that, of course, is Anthony Joseph on YouTube.
Okay, good job putting your real name on the podcast this time. One of the all-time great.
Didn't even think about it. didn't even check my work before we started.
Even after the snafu last time, I didn't even bother to look this time either. So that's how you know we're pros. One of the all-time great poets. We're back in next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball.